Call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 38.
Je déclare la réunion ouverte. Bienvenue à la réunion numéro 38 du Comité permanent de la défense nationale de la Chambre des communes. Aujourd'hui, c'est la première journée du mois autochtone. Vous savez que nous collaborons beaucoup dans la stratégie industrielle de la défense avec les peuples autochtones. Conformément à l'article 108.2 du règlement et à la motion adoptée par le comité le 23 février 2026, le comité se réunit pour étudier l'impact de la stratégie industrielle de la défense. La réunion d'aujourd'hui se déroule en format hybride. Conformément au règlement, quelqu'un nous regarde en ligne via l'application Zoom. Avant de continuer, je vous demande de consulter les lignes directrices qui sont sur la table. Ce sont des mesures pour éviter des accidents sonores et préserver la santé des interprètes. Pour rappel,
If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. And for interpretation, I would remind witnesses that committee members may ask questions in either French or English. And if you need interpretation, please take a moment now to prepare your earpiece and select the listening channel in advance. We oftentimes fuss around that, so if we can do it beforehand, all the better. And again, all comments should be addressed to the chair. Okay, I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. We have from Bombardier, Inc., Pierre Saint-Pierre, our Vice President, Government and Industry Affairs. Welcome. From CAE, Inc., France Hubert, the Vice President, Defense and Security for Canada and International. From Canada Rocket Company, Hugh Colias, our Chief Executive Officer. From MDA Space, Mike Greenlee, the Chief Executive Officer. And North Space Corporation, Raoul Coel, Chief Executive Officer. And Reaction Dynamics Lab, Inc., Bashar Alzdian, also the Chief Executive Officer. We're going to proceed with 5 minutes. We have a large panel today, so I'm going to keep it as tight as I can throughout the process, and I look forward to an engaged conversation. Why don't we begin with Pierre Saint-Pierre from Bombardier. Over to you, sir, for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres.
Thank you, Chair, ladies and gentlemen, members of the committee. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity of appearing before you today. My name is Pierre Pien. I am the Vice Chair of Governmental Affairs, VP of Governmental Affairs with Bombardier.
The opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Pierre Pien. I'm the Vice President of Government and Industry Affairs at Bombardier. Bombardier is a world-leading business aircraft manufacturer headquartered in Canada. We employ directly more than 12,000 people in our Canadian operations. They are proud to participate in the Canadian aerospace industry and contribute to making it one of the most preeminent advanced technological sectors in Canada and a leading aerospace hub on the international scene. They're also extremely proud to have the opportunity to support Canada's national security objectives. My remarks will focus on the following: Bombardier's capabilities and impact in Canada and our contribution to Canada's defense sovereignty and the defense industrial strategy. Bombardier has existed in Canada for nearly 85 years. Innovation is in our DNA, and we have proudly developed and received certification for 30 aircraft programs in the last 30 years to the highest performance and safety standards. We have established a strong working relationship with Transport Canada. Bombardier contributes around 7.4 billion Canadian dollars to Canada's GDP annually, and we support close to 50,000 jobs across the country. Bombardier's success is made possible by a robust network of more than 1,500 suppliers from coast to coast, demonstrating that the company is at the heart of a thriving national ecosystem. Our expertise in business aviation allows us to contribute to airborne defense. An important pillar of our company is to leverage our portfolio of Challenger and Global aircraft with our unparalleled engineering and maintenance expertise to offer business jet-based solutions for defense missions. We have decades of experience in this space. Bombardier is known to be a collaborative and trusted and flexible partner. We have built long-term partnerships with governments and militaries worldwide and joined forces with the world's most advanced mission system integrators and providers. Bombardier delivers multi-mission, long-range, high-performance aircraft platforms used for different solutions, including intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, airborne early warning, signal intelligence and electronic warfare, medical evacuation, and more. Business aircraft have become increasingly attractive as platforms for defense applications because they are cost-effective in terms of acquisition, operation, and maintenance costs, compared to the legacy platform, the larger commercial airliners, and also because of their performance, speed at which they fly, the range of the aircraft, and the altitude at which they fly, 45,000 feet. For instance, the Global 8000 is a case in point. It has a range of 8,000 nautical miles, connecting almost any 2 points around the world, and the speed, certified speed, is at slightly below supersonic speed, so Mach 0.095. We welcome last week's federal government announcement to invest in Canadian aerospace industry by favoring a solution based on the Bombardier Global 6500, a made-in-Canada aircraft. We also congratulate Saab on being selected as the preferred supplier for Canada's airborne early warning and control fleet with its Global Eye solution. This announcement further highlights the versatility of the Global 6500 aircraft, the Bombardier aircraft, as well as its growing role in Canada. Last December, the federal government announced the purchase of 6 Global 6500 to enhance the RCAF's multi-mission air transport capability. And this March, the National Research Council of Canada announced it acquired a Global 6500 aircraft for critical research and development activities. Bombardier's business aircraft are chosen around the world for defense missions. Some examples include Germany with the Pegasus program for signal intelligence, Sweden for ISR and multi-role government transportation missions, the U.S. with the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force, the Hades and Bacon programs, and Switzerland for medical evacuation and government transportation, among many examples. We have a strong reputation around the world for providing reliable and robust aircraft to perform critical demanding missions. We have expertise in complex modifications, certifications, and special mission integration. And we also have a worldwide network of maintenance support infrastructure, not only for our civil customers, but also for our government and military customers as well. Nous nous réjouissons de voir que le Canada mis sur
We
ses
are very pleased to see that Canada is setting up its own resources to build capacities in defense. We are one of the many companies who are proud to be Canadian. We have a lot to offer to our country, and for us, this is very encouraging news. As I mentioned previously, nothing will make our Canadian employees more happy than to know that the aircraft that they're building here in Canada will help defend our country and our borders. Bombardier welcomes the first defense industrial strategy and is looking forward to the opportunity of collaborating with the federal government in order to increase the sovereign defense capabilities of our country. We believe that Bombardier has a lot to offer to our country in the years to come. Few countries rather have the capacity of building, certifying, and maintaining aircraft. That is a strategic capacity that we have to all be proud of.
By the Canadian government as very positive, not only for Bombardier, but also for the Canadian industry. The defense industrial strategy sends a strong signal that defense investments are intended to be an economic and innovation driver for the country, while ensuring that capabilities, preferably the types...
Those are great words, but we have to move on to the next one, sir.
The types that Canada has sovereignty over are provided to our armed forces. I look forward to the conversation and providing you with more input in terms of our views. I apologize for the interruption,
but I am trying to keep it tight. But thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to go now to CAE. And France Hubert, over to you, please.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président et distingués membres.
Good morning, Chair, distinguished members of the committee. I would like to thank you for this opportunity of appearing before you to talk about the impact of the defense industrial strategy on our country. Of course, that is a strategy that was proudly announced from our plant and headquarters in Montreal. My name is France Hubert, and I'm the Vice President and General Manager of the Defense and Security Division at CAE for Canada International.
Simple. We exist to make the world safer. On the civil side, we do this by training over 150,000 pilots annually. In defense, we train the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces to support operational readiness through advanced training and simulation. We are headquartered in Montreal and employ approximately 11,000 people globally, with approximately 5,000 here in Canada. We operate in more than 40 countries with over 240 locations worldwide. In defense and security, we employ more than 6,000 people and support over 85 military platforms from a wide range of manufacturers. This global experience allows us to deliver integrated training solutions across air, land, and the sea. Here in Canada, We have a strong coast-to-coast footprint from Halifax, Nova Scotia to Comox, British Columbia, and 11 more locations in between, including Trenton and Petawawa. We also support a network of more than 400 Canadian small and medium-sized enterprises through our supply chain. The Defense Industrial Strategy identified 10 key sovereign capabilities, one of which is training and simulation. CAE is uniquely positioned to champion this priority in Canada. We already build right here in Canada with Canadian suppliers. We partner with all major manufacturers and over 400 small and medium-sized businesses across Canada, and we can integrate any platform the government would want to buy. Our experience shows that acquiring platforms alone is not enough to achieve mission readiness. Without integrated modern training systems, mission support, and a skilled workforce, Canada will not fully unlock the value of its defense investments. Dans le domaine de la défense, nous observons trois.
In the defense sector, we are seeing three trends. First, operations are becoming increasingly complex. Fifth and sixth generation fighter jets, advanced sensors, and integrated systems require high-quality training environments, particularly in simulation. Second, there is an urgent need for action. Canada and its allies must deploy capabilities more quickly. Beyond acquiring platforms, this also means accelerating recruitment and training. Third, we have a great opportunity to strengthen Canada's industrial base. National champions must ensure that defense investments benefit the entire ecosystem through targeted investments and the creation of sovereign intellectual property to support the industry in the long term. CAE is a sought-after partner. We recently announced several partnerships with global defense leaders. We are engaged in productive discussions with Canada's allies, including German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, who visited our offices last week. These are direct outcomes of the Defense Industrial Strategy. These partnerships benefit our extensive supply chain while strengthening the country's sovereign capabilities, which then become competitive on the global stage.
I would highlight three recommendations. First, identify and engage national champions quickly. We are encouraged by the recent release of the Strategic Partnership Framework. We hope the government will identify strategic partners swiftly so that together we can implement the Defense Industrial Strategy. Second, use defense investment to build the Canadian industrial base. With the deliberate strategic partnerships between government and industry, large corporations, SME, and academic institutions can work in unity to drive economic growth, support innovation, and create export opportunities. Established players can help mobilize the ecosystem and are best positioned to help the government achieve maximum economic impact. And third, prioritize sovereign training and sustainment capabilities. Canada should invest in domestic training system and infrastructure as part of major acquisitions. It could reverse the current trend. Instead of relying on foreign support, Canada could welcome its allies, expand international defense collaboration, and share its expertise with the world as a strategic export capability. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Merci, thank you. Mr. Colias, over to you.
And thank you to the committee for the opportunity to speak today about the impact of Canada's defense industrial strategy and the efforts to develop a Canadian sovereign launch capability. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the Algonquin Anishinaabe as the traditional stewards of this land. My name is Hugh Colias, Chief Executive Officer of the Canada Rocket Company. We are a Canadian-owned and controlled company developing medium-lift launch capability in Canada. We are also one of 3 companies on today's panel that have received funding through the Innovation for Defense Excellence and Security, or IDEAS, program's Launch the North initiative. In short, this initiative aims to accelerate the development of sovereign launch in Canada. I want to start by emphasizing how grateful we are that the Government of Canada has launched this initiative. We are an example of how the Defense Industrial Strategy is working. The public signaling and initial funding from the Launch the North initiative have acted as a significant catalyst. To date, every single public dollar invested in Canada Rocket Company has attracted nearly $2 of private capital. This demonstrates that strategic government signals unlock private markets. We believe the best use of public contributions is to be multiplied by private investment. In just 6 months since incorporation, we have raised $22.8 million in total capital, $14.5 million in private investment, including from the BDC, and an $8.3 million non-dilutive grant through Ideas. We've attracted over 20 experienced engineers from around the world, many of which are Canadians repatriating back. These engineers have all worked at global launch and technology companies such as SpaceX, Blue Origin, ArianeGroup, Rocket Lab, and Tesla. I provide these examples to you today to demonstrate the real-world impact of the defense industrial strategy. It would not be possible to attract the engineers, private capital, or move at the speed we are without the signaling and support from the Government of Canada. The global space economy is expected to be $1.8 trillion by 2035. Our world runs on satellites. GPS-dependent systems underpin over 20% of our GDP, from global financial networks, logistics, telecommunications, power grids, weather forecasting, and defense coordination. Access to space is critical infrastructure. Canada currently depends on our allies to place Canadian payloads into orbit. The current commercial launch market is dominated by one actor, SpaceX, which launched over 84% of payload mass to orbit in 2024. China is a distant second. There is a multi-year backlog for launch capacity globally, and the cost over the last few years has risen by at least 30%. The current Ideas Launch the North framework is an exceptional first step, focused on establishing tactical light lift capabilities. However, to truly secure our sovereignty and economic future, Canada must look towards medium lift capability. The medium lift launch market, classified as between 2 to 20,000 kilograms of payload to orbit, held over 56% of the commercial market in 2024 and is expected to be up to $20 billion in the mid-2030s. Medium lift capability, especially on the higher end of payload delivery, is limited to a few global players and represents a substantial national security and economic opportunity for Canada to capture. To scale from the foundation laid by the Ideas program to a fully operational medium lift capability, we require 3 strategic commitments from the Government of Canada. First, anchor demand. The government must become an early customer by committing to contract domestic launch capacity for future Canadian civil and military payloads. Underwriting first flights, exactly as NASA did in the early 2000s, is the single most effective way to crowd in the private capital required. Second, continued co-investment in development. We need continued cost-shared, milestone-based funding models that match private capital investments through the next phases of test, qualification, and flight. Third, regulatory alignment. Streamlined launch licensing, expedited permitting, and appropriate export control treatment for Canadian Sovereign Launch Program are necessary to make this viable at the pace the strategic environment requires. To quote Brigadier General Christopher Horner, commander of the 3 Canadian Space Division, who spoke at the Space Canada Horizons Conference last month, the strategic question before us is no longer whether space matters. The strategic question is, will Canada possess the freedom of action required to protect its sovereignty, security, and economic prosperity of the future? Canada has a narrow window to establish this capability. The talent exists, the private capital is available, the government investment to date is already producing results. The question before this committee is, how do we continue to accelerate policy and investment? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to answer any questions committee members may have.
Thank you. Mr. Greenlee, over to you for 5 minutes.
Monsieur Greenlee, c'est à vous.
Greenlee, the CEO of MDA Space. MDA Space is Canada's largest space company, founded 57 years ago, has 4,000 employees, is headquartered in Canada, and is growing globally. We're active in the defense sector through the provision of Earth and space observation satellites, space-based defense communication satellites, space control capabilities, and through our subsidiary, 49 North, the provision of C4ISR capability to the Joint Force. I personally have led companies in the Canadian defense sector for the past 35 years. I spent 6 years as the chair of the Canadian Association of Defense and Security Industries, and I'm currently the chair of Space Canada, the industry's association for Canada's space companies. MDA Space is a defense prime contractor and prime integrator, meaning that we sign the primary contract with the government, we select and manage the supply chain, we integrate our own systems and supplier subsystems and components onto the platform, and we shoulder the financial and logistical burden and risk to deliver complex national programs on time and on budget. In our case, that often means we are responsible for launching and operating satellite systems and networks. I'd like to provide input to the committee's study on the defense industrial strategy in two areas. One, on how the strategy should be implemented to achieve industrial expansion and job growth, and two, on how procurement governance and ingrained culture needs to change to realize the benefits of the defense industrial strategy. The existence of the defense industrial strategy is excellent. We have been seeking policy like this for my entire 35-year career, and is the necessary start for Canada to achieve policy alignment with allied peer nations and to support the development and global competitiveness of our defense industrial sector. Canada now has a national policy that states that there are 10 key areas where the country needs to have sovereign capability, and that the Government of Canada's priority is to build this capability in Canada in partnership with Canadian industry. That is a strong statement, and one that will need consistent and rigorous application and attention, or the strategy is a waste, and we will continue to rely on foreign countries. To ensure this is achieved, the policy must have three tiers of capability procurement: mature solutions, technology acceleration, and technology development. Mature solutions are being produced today by established defense firms in Canada and should be procured as quickly as possible through strategic partnerships to meet the immediate needs of the Canadian Armed Forces. The new strategic framework will be very helpful with that. Technology acceleration should be targeted at emerging Canadian defense companies with promising technologies to bring them to full operational capability and deployment. And technology development should be targeted at mid to longer term R&D cycles for next-gen technologies in a rapid competitive process that iterates on solutions that are operational. These tiers of capability require two roadmaps: one that maps the Canadian Armed Forces capability needs in the 10 sovereign capability areas over the short, medium, and long term, and one that maps Canada's industrial capability from fully mature to emerging to core skills that can be applied to future capability development. This multifaceted strategic partnering with Canadian industry will be challenging for the government in the short term, while the Defence Investment Agency is acquiring its organizational authorities, taking over decision-making from other departments, and increasing its staffing levels. It will require an unprecedented cultural change for the government, and particularly the Canadian Armed Forces, to partner and promote Canadian defence industrial capabilities. This has not occurred in Canada since the Second World War industrial buildup, but must now be reinvigorated. Canada's industrial base are proud of our Canadian forces, and we massively appreciate the sovereignty and security that they provide to our way of life. The CAF has best-in-the-world elite units like JTF-2, large and growing professional military teams across the Army, Navy, and Air Force, and in some cases, emerging capabilities that need to be developed and matured and be made more operational. But Canadian industry is really proud of our industrial base, and we require the same pride in return, to be proud of the Canadian industrial base, to work with us to build Canadian military capability as we move forward into the future. All public servants, including those at D&D and the CAF, must commit to the government's stated policy to engage now with trusted industry leaders in the key sovereign capability areas and to begin developing next generation with Canadian industry all the time. We are seeing some early signs that this cultural shift is taking shape, but also signs of early resistance as procurement teams flinch and revert to old ways of buying from foreign countries and foreign companies. Executive levels of government must stand in and flow down the policy in the 10 sovereign capability areas and reinforce that building with Canadian firms is mandatory, and it begins now. Overall, this is all very exciting, and this policy is a great opportunity for Canada. We just need to keep focus on it every single day. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Greenlee. Mr. Goel, over to you, sir.
Oui, merci. Je comprends, Monsieur le Président, que vous souhaitez être très strict sur le temps.
Mr. Chair, I understand that you want to be strict with the timing, that they stick to the 5 minutes, but if they go really fast, it makes it super challenging for our interpreters to follow. Maybe just a thought for them who are doing a great job.
Speak slowly. We'll have a lot of time throughout the debate to have these discussions. And I apologize for rushing you. I don't mean to do so. Mr. Goel, take your time. But you only have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today in my capacity as CEO of Nordspace, a 100% Canadian-owned company dedicated for years to providing made-in-Canada sovereign space launch capability with our manufacturing facility located in Markham, Ontario, and spaceport located in Newfoundland and Labrador. Space is recognized in defense policy as critical to our sovereignty, our security, and our prosperity. Nordspace's mission is to help Canada translate that policy ambition into practical domestic capability. Today, we have a choice to make and a narrow window of opportunity to make it. Will Canada choose to be a participant or a leader in space? Will we choose to be buyers or builders? Nordspace builds orbital launch vehicles, a spaceport and spacecraft, designed, manufactured, and soon launched in Canada. Our focus is simple: Canadian payloads on Canadian rockets from Canadian soil to save Canadian lives on and off the battlefield while securing thousands of Canadian jobs, components, and intellectual property. This end-to-end approach is intended to complement the Government of Canada's procurement framework by strengthening the build pillar of build, partner, buy, with a truly sovereign option for assured access to orbit. For Nordspace, launch is a means to an end. Our simple, scalable, and proven architecture focuses on reliably progressing from light to medium lift vehicles and prioritizing urgent capability development over science experiments that unnecessarily delay achieving operational capabilities. From a defense perspective, assured access to space is critical. It underpins navigation, communication, surveillance, and command and control for the Canadian Armed Forces and our allies. In a crisis, we cannot assume that launch capability elsewhere in the world will be available or even prioritized for Canadian needs. Indeed, Canada and Canadian taxpayers have experienced this reality in recent times with RADARSAT-2, and history will repeat itself. A sovereign launch capability helps ensure that when a satellite must be deployed or replenished quickly, Canada has responsive options at home. If it does not, bluntly, foreign nations are making national security decisions for Canada. Economically, a domestic launch capability supports high-quality jobs in engineering, manufacturing, and advanced technologies. It draws on strengths in aerospace and automotive, aluminum, and critical minerals, generates significant economic activity, and over 1,000 permanent jobs over the coming decade alone. It also keeps intellectual property in Canada, allowing us to innovate quickly in response to evolving CAF requirements while exporting competitive solutions to our allies. Nordspace is working relentlessly to provide sovereign space solutions through our launch vehicle and our space systems division to build a self-sustaining launch cadence. We are working hard to demonstrate suborbital launch in the coming weeks, powered by our in-house designed, manufactured, and tested patent-pending Hadfield rocket engines, followed by orbital launch in 2028. Our satellite, Terra Nova, is headed to orbit later this year to demonstrate real-time AI-driven space domain awareness and wildfire monitoring. And we have secured a ride to the moon for Canada's first lunar rover, Terry, named after Terry Fox, on an Artemis mission as early as next year. These small, privately funded internal Pathfinder missions are carefully planned and executed today to scale to and support a viable and commercially sustainable launch program for tomorrow, one that does not perpetually rely on the D&D and government grants and contracts to thrive and is resilient against all odds so that we do not end up with another Avro Arrow moment. Building real businesses is indeed the reason why companies such as SpaceX and New Zealand's Rocket Lab have thrived, not just survived, and continue to provide resilient, defense-specific launch, hypersonic, surveillance, and communication capabilities to defend their nations. Let me be clear, Nordspace is here to win in Canada and win on the world stage, and to establish a new Canadian prime born from this bold defense industrial strategy. We have been encouraged by recent federal initiatives from Launch the North to the Canadian Space Launch Act. These measures send a strong signal to industry and investors that Canada is, in fact, serious. Already, Nordspace is increasing the size of our manufacturing facility in Markham to tenfold to support 235 employees and, as we speak, expanding our spaceport in Newfoundland. We are forging critical partnerships across Canada, including launch services agreements, most recently, just last week, with Alberta-based Wyvern Space to demonstrate state-of-the-art deployable optics for Canada, potentially the first ever fully sovereign Canadian space mission upon launch with Nordspace. Finally, space is a powerful source of national unity and inspiration. As Minister Champagne recently noted, Canadian astronaut Colonel Hansen's journey around the moon reminded us that the sky is no longer the limit. In closing, Nordspace has three key brief recommendations. First, we recommend the Government of Canada ensure Transport Canada has the resources it needs to develop the regulatory regime envisioned by the Canadian Space Launch Act, and the government consider Canada's own dedicated space command. We further recommend the government continue to invest in sovereign launch over the long term on the higher end of light lift, and extending to medium and heavy lift alongside a spaceport that genuinely can support these scaled capabilities. Finally, Nordspace would like to work with the government under the Defense Industrial Strategy, specifically to develop a framework for ensuring that the Government of Canada prioritizes building truly sovereign space launch solutions over buying foreign ones. As Bijan Horner, commander for the 3 Canadian Space Division, has said, from the Arctic to cislunar space, Canada's strategic environment is expanding, and so must our ambition. Thank you, and I look very forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Alzane, over to you. You have 5 minutes. Nice and slow.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the invitation. My father came to Canada as an immigrant, seeking safety, opportunity, and stability. Canada also gave me that, and so many others. And this is why I'm starting this company here. Today, the question is whether Canada remains a safe, sovereign, technologically capable nation, or becomes dependent on others for its most critical infrastructure. This is a question the Defense Industrial Strategy was written to answer. Comme étudiant scientifique, j'ai trop souvent vu l'innovation quitter le Canada.
As a student and scientist, I've seen innovation leave Canada far too often. Good people, good ideas realized elsewhere. As a founder, I decided to build a company that anchors cutting-edge manufacturing, highly skilled jobs, and strategic capability right here at home.
Designed to underpin Canada's economy, sovereignty, and role in allied security for decades. I want to leave you with three problems and three things we, as industry, we can offer in return. The first problem is talent drain. The strategy puts a number on it. 125,000 new defense jobs by 2035. Those jobs do not appear on their own. They come from keeping our best people in the country, not training them for someone else's industrial base. The second problem is not enough competition. Competition creates heat. Heat creates value. Invest in more than one winner. A strategy that builds national champions still needs more than one contender behind each capability. Otherwise, the champion has nothing to beat, and the country pays more for less. The third problem is perception. We treat defense as a use case. It is not. Defense is an enabler. It is a route of navigation, communication, banking, imaging, sensing, timing. The farmer relies on it, the fisherman, emergency services, aviation, oil and gas. Defense base has always been the industrial base. They are one and the same. The strategy says this loud when it comes to space, sensors, specialized manufacturing, etc. A modern army cannot fight without its space assets. Lose them, and you do not just lose a weapon, you lose the backbone of the civilian economy. Voici ce que l'industrie peut offrir. D'abord, des
Here's
emplois.
what the industry can do, especially, first off, the expertise, and then economic viability, from banking, trade to agriculture and energy, to strengthen the Canadian economy. And above all, and thirdly, Canada's safety and security. The ability to make our own decisions in our own timeline, in our own interest, and that of our allies. This is what the strategy calls strategic autonomy. Canada remains the only G7 country without a sovereign launch capability. The Defense Industrial Strategy has begun to change that through DRDC's Launch the North program, with the goal of reaching orbit in the fourth quarter of 2028. Reaction Dynamics is one of the three recipients of this grant.
I want to recognize, first and foremost, my team, my investors, my board. Without them, this company would not exist. As I speak to you, some of engineers are currently on the test site preparing for our first flight. We had some very exciting testing on Friday. We stayed up until midnight. I was with the team, and I'm really happy that things are moving forward. I also want to highlight the champions who believe in space and who saw it as a strategic asset it is. First, Ahmed Khorshid of the IDS program at the RDC, whose exceptional ability to navigate the many pillars of government and breathe life into this program is why we'll deliver orbital launch. Angelina Armakov at ISED, who has advocated for sovereign launch since the inception of RDX, which is 9 years ago, and Cody Pelletier, who masterminded the program, identified the key needs, and did so at a back-breaking pace. And last but not least, Brigadier General Horner. His confidence means more than, in fact, I can express here. His leadership in championing sovereign launch capability as a national imperative has been instrumental in securing the support and funding this industry has long needed. And of course, the CSA, which has carried this country's space ambition on its shoulders for decades, quietly and without enough credit. Until a moment like this make us look up. Lisa Campbell is a hero and role model. I close with this. We cannot expect a different outcome when the outcome we are after is the product of the same process that got us here. This strategy is a chance to change the process, and we should not waste it. Our first step to the stars is a first launch in Q4 2028, feeding into a medium lift capability that meets this country's need and gives Canada true space sovereignty through optionality. The Prime Minister has asked us to be bold. Being bold is not about making better decisions. It is about accepting that on the heel of our success, we should be willing to accept failure. And this is what we call autonomy. We pay it now in our own currency, or we pay it later in someone else's. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you all. I really applaud your leadership in this industry. These are very thoughtful and powerful statements that all of you have made, and our committee appreciates that and welcomes it. To start us off in our first round of questions, up to 6 minutes, is Mr. Bazin.
Before you hit the clock, Mr. Chair, I just want to give notice of motion that I move that the Minister of National Defence and officials be invited to appear on the Supplementary Estimates A 2026-2027 for 2 hours, and that this meeting take place at least 5 calendar days before the Supplementary Estimates A 2026-2027 are to be reported to the House. So that's notice of motion.
Noted. Back to you again, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now you can start the clock. I want to thank all our witnesses for coming in. I know a lot of you were here for CanSec as well, and got to see some of you on the trade floor. I think it was interesting listening to all of you, and we got some newer startup businesses here, and we got some well-established primes, and so it's interesting to have this conversation with you, especially from the aerospace sector. You know, one of the comments that some of the comments that stuck out to me, Mr. Greenlee, you talked about culture, and we often talk about culture change within the Canadian Armed Forces, but you're talking about culture change within the industry itself as well as with those in PSPC and other government departments as well to take on more risk?
Not necessarily take on more risk, but to make sure that people are making decisions aligned with the defense industrial strategy. It doesn't necessarily take on more risk. If we're working with proven prime contractors and we create strategic agreements with them and move forward with immediate procurements, and then we have our head up and we look at a roadmap of what defense capability we need when, and we're working with other Canadian industries to fund technology acceleration or new R&D development, we can make sure that we have the right capabilities available and operational at the right time. And so I think that that's what we need to do. But we need to stay committed to the Canadian defense industrial base while we're doing that in the sovereign capability areas that are in the defense industrial strategy.
So are we seeing out of the defense industrial strategy any actual contracts getting signed? I know that there's a notice of contract potentially on the Global Eye that was announced just, but not actually pen to paper, I don't believe. We don't know value, don't know quantity. Mr. Pune, you know, definitely from Bombardier's standpoint, it was good news for Bombardier, but not necessarily certainty.
Well, for us, so in the past, our defense business, when we look at you know, our projects and success, to be quite frank, they've been mostly outside of Canada. But I think what we've seen with the launch of the defense industrial strategy, but also the creation of DIA, you know, you mentioned a culture change, and I think it is quite transformational because it is the first time that Canada has a defense industrial strategy in place. So I think key will be implementation. We welcome the focus on exports. We welcome the focus on R&D development as well in the defense space. But I think one example that I gave, actually 2 examples, recent examples of contracts that were put in place are the Global 6500 for the RCAF, the multi-role capability airlift program, and also the NRC aircraft for research purposes.
So the last time you were at committee, you were complaining about lack of competition when it was down to the decision to buy the P-8. And you mentioned the Defense Investment Agency. Have you guys looked at Division 16 and Bill C-31, the Budget and Implementation Act that establishes the Defense Investment Agency Act? Have anyone had a chance to read it? Anyone? Yeah, no. I recommend you actually read it because in that act, they are providing over 20 different exclusions to limit competition, as well as providing an out for the minister responsible for DIA to actually explain why someone was excluded. So the Act smells more of sole sourcing than competition. And Mr. Alizan, you talked about competition and making sure that it will make us all stronger if we have competition, as well as it protects the taxpayer. So can you talk more into, you know, on the side of competition, how important that is to ensure that we are getting first and foremost, what we need for the Canadian Armed Forces. 2, that it is being brought in in the best interest of the Canadian taxpayer, who's ultimately doing this, going to be paying for the procurement. And 3 is that it removes the ability for the government to select who they want as the champion.
Definitely, and thank you for the question. Competition, we see it as a positive because it also helps create an ecosystem. I will talk specifically about launch. There are 3 companies that have received funding from IDS, DND for Launcher North. Multiple companies have applied. If a single company end up being a champion, but that company goes under, we lose that capability. So having competition means we maintain that capability. As a country, funding those capabilities mean we have to ensure that they are also resilient and sustainable. And I will even push further. That will just make us better companies. It will make any of us 3. I'm happy to have Raul and Hugh as competitors, friendly competitors. We talk a lot. We work together, but also we all see the same thing. We want to have that capability developed here in the country. I'll push further. I'd rather have any of us succeed than have our satellites being launched on other rockets. And I'll push even further. We do not want satellite companies to launch their satellites on Canadian rockets just because we're Canadian. We want them to launch because we offer the best option. We're already in competition with the international market. We're already competing with SpaceX, with Rocket Lab, and that's okay, and that's really good. So having that internal competition in the country means not only the capability can be maintained and sustained, but we can also offer the best offering for our commercial partners and for the government.
Thank you. Mr. Colas, you used to work for SpaceX, if I remember correctly. And so you talk about talent drain, brain drain, you went to the States, but you came home. So if you want to talk from that standpoint, as well as the importance of having, the capacity within Canada. You talked about the backlog in the international market. Over 82% is controlled by SpaceX right now. What's the actual ability for us to get our rockets in space and be able to take some of that business away from SpaceX and others?
If I could suggest, Hugh, that you answer that question through Mr. Watchhorn. Over to you, sir.
Well, I don't agree to give my time to Mr. Bazan, but anyway, go ahead, Mr. Claes.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. It's just a quick clarifier. That was my co-founder who came from SpaceX, as well as a number of other engineers. The exciting opportunity for Canada is that SpaceX and Blue Origin are going to be preoccupied with their own demand. So Starlink, data centers in space, as well as the lunar missions that were recently announced through NASA. So there's a large opportunity for really any country to come in and replace Falcon 9, and that's the global opportunity that we see. And Canada is right at the precipice of beginning that journey. And I think that's where we've been able to bring in a ton of engineers and experience to make this happen. And we're really focused on being the most uninnovative launch company to at least start. And that's because getting to space is a very difficult challenge. Even if you procure the IP, you purchase the plans, it's really important that you bring in the experience of folks who have seen it and done it before, and that's a key part to our strategy.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et je vais continuer en
Thank you, Chair. I'll continue in French. It's such a good panel that we have here to see all of these Canadian companies who are innovating. These are really leaders in the industry, and there are new companies as well that will take us to space. So we have all the confidence in you. So I'd like to start with one of the pillars of the strategy, which is about changing the paradigm, because we used to buy 75% of all of our military assets from the U.S. Now the strategy wants us to pivot from to 70% Canadian content. So we can start with Mr. Pune with Bombardier. I'd like to know how you will operationalize all of this to reach 70% Canadian content in the contracts that you will get. Thank you for the question. Well, at the outset, I would say that in the aircraft industry, the supply chains are very integrated. So when we look at these objectives, these are not mutually exclusive objectives. We'll continue to reinforce very important partnerships we have with the Americans, for instance. We have NORAD obligations, NATO obligations for sovereignty in the Arctic, defending the North, or North America in general, while diversifying our partnerships. So when you look at our supply chains, we're very integrated with the U.S., with Mexico to a certain degree, with very important suppliers in Europe as well. So for us, it's not a zero-sum game. It's an opportunity to be able to fulfill many objectives at the same time. And also quickly, with regard to what happened a couple of years ago in the Canadian multi-mission aircraft program.
But I think what has changed is this focus on sovereign capabilities. And of course, for a country like Canada, we cannot be jacks of all trades. So we'll have to be very focused on areas where Canada has competitive strengths, comparative advantages, where we want to focus to develop sovereign capabilities. That requires like earlier engagement with the industry, even pre-RFP. I think that, to me, it's through that lens that I would see the kind of the change that has occurred in the last few years and the opportunity, I think, for Canada. But there are many areas I think we'll need to keep partnering and we'll need to keep buying from other countries as well.
Peut-être, Mme Hébert, sur le même sujet, on a eu la chance à Mirabel, puis on a un beau...
Ms. Hébert, on the same topic, we have a good ecosystem at Mirabel. We have companies that are integrated in the aerospace realm in general. So we're trying to integrate as many Quebec companies as possible. I'm from a city not far from Mirabel. So how do you use that strategy to go and seek these small and medium-sized companies to integrate them into what you're doing? Thank you. Well, we have already more than 400 companies in our value chain, and a good number of them are from the aerospace industry in Quebec. Traditionally, what we have done, and will continue to do this, first is at CAE, 90% of our revenue is from exports. So that gives us a big advantage. We really have global marketplace and relationships. So as we grow, we are taking our providers and suppliers and the entire ecosystem with us. So small and medium scale companies, they also in turn become exporters because they are part of our ecosystem. With the DIS, we'll continue to do this. We want to do even more. Thank you. So companies that are here today, you represent exactly what we want to do with the DIS, especially companies that are looking to space. And my colleague from Longueuil will definitely ask you a question to you, Mr. Elzane. Now, I'd like to focus on the three companies that want to go to space. Mr. Collias, how do you see the competition? How will you reach space? Or between the three of you, how will it play out? How will things become operational?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. As Bashar was mentioning, competition is always welcomed. I think at some point, we as a group will need to find a way to work together, not just as a group, but also with the industry here at this table and who are not. We're all taking very different approaches. Ours is medium lift, a much larger capable vehicle for deploying Telesat Lightspeed to orbit, which we view as a very strategic importance for the country, as well as just from a commercial business model perspective. So we look forward to seeing how all the teams progress, and we'll find a way to get to orbit one way or another.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Watchorn. Welcome back, Christine Normandy, to the committee. You have 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. C'est effectivement un plaisir.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a pleasure to be back at the Defense Committee. I'd like to thank the witnesses for being with us. We do indeed have a great panel today. So each time I ask a question, even though I ask it to a single individual, for instance, please don't shy away if you have something to add or share. So Mr. Greenlee made a comment. My first question will be in relation to that. You insisted on the importance of mapping out the CAF's needs so that the industry can follow, and also mapping out the linkages we have with the allies. So I'd like to hear from you on that a little bit. Is the DIS not putting the cart before the horse? Because are we really fully understanding the real needs of the CAF and what their operational needs in connection with the allies? I mean, would that have been better to have such a document before having the DIS?
I don't think we need that before we have the DIS. I think that what I was referring to is the importance of keeping our head up about what capabilities we need in the different horizons into the future. Some of the excuses that will be used to not buy from Canadian industry will be for interoperability or for speed. And there's no excuse for interoperability. We can have sovereign interoperability. That is a requirement in the systems that are delivered by Canadian industry. And if we're looking ahead, there should be no excuse for speed. So today, a lot of the activities that are going on, to answer Mr. Bazan's question, we have a strategic agreement. We signed it in November with the Defense Investment Agency. It's absolutely working to provide satellites for enhanced polar communications in the Arctic. We are moving with speed. This procurement is going much faster than anything I've seen in 35 years. It is excellent, and it works for Canadian industry. So there are examples of where this is really, really working. But to do that for the next generation of capabilities, we have to be looking ahead. Because in some cases, we'll want to maybe mine's working right now today because I have 100% of the capability necessary to deliver. Maybe there's a Canadian industry today that's at 60 or 70% capability to deliver. But if we're looking ahead in the roadmap of what we're going to buy next, then those types of firms can be getting seed money to be able to complete the operational building of their systems and have them ready for procurements when they come. So if we're committed to Canadian industry and we're looking ahead at the next things that we need, we can make sure that we're funding and seeding industry to be ready for the next things that we need. And then there's no excuse not to go to Canadian industry to meet the need that Tim was talking about in terms of making sure that 70% of those dollars is actually being applied to Canadian firms.
Merci beaucoup. Une prochaine question. Puis là,
Thank you very much. Now, my next question, I know everyone would have something to contribute given the panel we have today. Now, aerospace is one of the sovereign capabilities that is identified in the DIS, but the list is very, very long when it comes to the different sovereign capabilities. And when you look at it, one could think that we don't really have real priorities. So what makes it so that the aerospace is a real priority? I mean, policies in aerospace, for instance, should they be mapped out into medium long term I could maybe comment on that. To come back to your question about mapping out the needs. Now, we need to also map out the skills that we have in Canada in aerospace. There are few companies that have these capabilities in Canada. It's a sector that is supporting 220,000 jobs in Canada, about 90,000 jobs directly. The sector is also quite R&D intensive compared to other manufacturing industries. On average, 2.6 to 3 times more intensive in terms of R&D. So we need to really very clearly identify the areas in which Canada has a competitive advantage and where we have shortcomings. And we have to make sure that we're filling out those gaps by investing more. For me, it's part of the next steps when it comes to the implementation of the DIS. It's quite encouraging to start somewhere. It's good that the start has been given, but of course we need to focus on the implementation of the strategy. You suggested an aerospace strategy, the Association of Aerospace Industries in Canada, and our companies are members of this association for some of the panelists here that are here today, and they are advocating for a more targeted strategy because we have very strong comparative advantages in this area, and we could use those to build the nation, to increase our industrial defense capability. And historically speaking, there is a very close connection between military aviation and civilian aviation. Unfortunately, that is something we have lost somewhat when we look at our forefathers, if you like, in the industry, there's always been that close linkage and technology transfer, and there's a lot of civilian technology that is initiated that takes its origin in military programs, and vice versa as well, because civilian aircraft are sometimes the platforms for military applications. So we'd like to see those close connections and rely on the synergies between civilian and military realms. Thank you very much.
Over to you, sir, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. The pace of adaptation in Ukraine is, we can see an entirely different. Symmetrical warfare has changed radically over the last several years, 2 years. I don't see anything in the defense industrial strategy to keep up with, to maintain that nimbleness, because we are always building for the last war. I mean, it's an adage that's true, and clearly it's been true to now. Our procurement strategy right now is quite hidebound. We want to change that. What is there in the industrial strategy? And I'll start with you, Mr. Pune. What is there built in? Is there any proactive nimbleness built into the into your R&D?
So maybe from a procurement framework point of view, and from the point of view of the defense industrial strategy. So it's really good and welcome to see a focus on R&D investment. I think this is one of the pillars of the defense industrial strategy. But we are, to be quite frank, I think Canada is starting from afar, in the sense of, if you look at the U.S. as an example, I think 15% of their defense investments, it's going to R&D and innovation. So they have programs like DARPA, DIU, and other programs where they are working very closely with the industry and upstream to develop the next generation technologies. So I think in Canada, I think our procurement system, like procuring innovation, we don't have the culture, maybe the risk-taking culture, but also the processes in place to really work much more upstream with the industry in a kind of back and forth way that I think you were alluding to. So building block approach, more trial and errors as well, instead of the traditional way that was more like the government comes up and the armed forces with very defined requirements, and then you do an RFP, right?
Do you find that the DIS addresses this problem?
So it talks about R&D, but I think, I was saying that key will be implementation. And in our view, in my view, this is an area where more work needs to be done in order to go beyond our traditional ways to support R&D, include innovation and dual-use technologies as well, and come up with other ways to engage with the industry more upstream and in a building block kind of approach, right? And I think, by and large, it doesn't exist, or the programs that exist are small-scale programs. So I think we need to scale up. I haven't seen any reliable stats, but I believe I've seen some indications that in Canada, the percentage of investments in defense going to R&D, it's below 5%.
5%.
Whereas in the U.S., it's 15%. In other countries, I've seen figures hovering around like 15 to 20%. So I think we have some distance to go here in terms of like procuring innovation and coming up with different types of models to engage with the industry and innovate at the speed of relevance. So.
Okay. And do we have any, is there anything envisioned in the DIS, because I haven't seen it, that envisions a crossover with the CAF and the things that we're learning in Ukraine right now with the development, to direct the development?
I think that the opportunity is there in the defense industrial strategy for that. If there are capability areas where we sign a strategic agreement with the Canadian Armed Forces or Department of National Defense, that we can then work together, especially under this new strategic framework that's coming out, then we would have all the potential in the world to be able to, if the capability desired was, for example, swarming UAVs or something like that, some of these more innovative capabilities that we're seeing in Ukraine, then partnering with the Canadian industry with that capability and going through an iterative process to develop that and make it operational is completely available to us through these new frameworks that are being established.
Okay. 70% aspirational Canadian content is one of the things that's brought up. And I listened to Secretary Fer recently at a trade conference where we used the 80% as an aspirational. How realistic is that at the current time to have 70% Canadian content in our procurement?
I think we got to watch that word 70% Canadian content. And
well,
so,
we're watching.
No, but it was my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my understanding that the goal was to shift from 70 cents of every dollar going to United States vendors who don't have 100% U.S. content.
Canadian content.
Of Canadian content, or to move to 70% of the dollars going to Canadian industry.
Yes.
Yeah, so 70% of the dollars to Canadian industry over the next decade is a possible thing. Absolutely.
It's possible, but is right now, is it realistic right now? What is the rough percentage right now?
Right now, it would be low. It might be like, I don't even know the number, probably like 15 or some number like this. It'll be low. But if we procure from Canadian industry in the sovereign areas and more over the next decade, the 70% of 70 cents of every dollar going to Canadian industry instead of going to U.S. industry is an achievable outcome.
Oh, sure it is in industrial capacity, but we given the nimbleness that we need to be able to switch, and the previous question I asked was about being able to match the technologies of the future today, because we pretty much have to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Now, time is up. I believe it's qualifying Canadian content 100%. He's saying if you have 70% partnership with Canadian content, we'll consider that 100% in that qualification. Mr. Elzon, I know that you had your hand up a few times. Very quickly, because we're running out of time.
To go to your first question about the war in Ukraine, we see drones. It is the most visible part of that shift in warfare. But the underlying foundation to that is also space. We shouldn't underestimate the importance of space for targeting, surveillance, reconnaissance, which is clearly cited in the Defense Industrial Strategy, which is something we're really happy about. A country cannot fight a war without a modern army cannot fight without space. And there's nothing we will put into space, be it launch or satellites, that will be more expensive than the cost of war on Earth. If you have a disruption in the port of Montreal.
Mr. Elzon?
Yeah.
That's good. Ms. Lapointe, over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Greenlee, at the last session, this committee undertook a study on space defense, and one of the things that really stood out was how much we rely on space-based systems without necessarily realizing it. And many of the services we Canadians use every day that depend on satellites and space infrastructure, we may not be fully aware of. And when people think about critical infrastructure, we think about roads and bridges and energy systems, and we don't always think about space. How much of Canada's economy and security now depends on space-based infrastructure, would you say?
A significant amount. There are estimates that would say that if we lost access to the global positioning system, for example, that would cost the Canadian economy $1 billion every day. So very, very significant. So for Canada to really get into our own lexicon that space is critical infrastructure and that space is dual use, then that lets you say, okay, I'm going to spend money on space as critical infrastructure for observation, communications, global positioning, timing for banks, all these different areas. That is dual use, which means it can then therefore count towards my defense spending in my 5% target. So space is a very powerful critical infrastructure investment for the country.
Mr. Kallias, you referenced critical infrastructure in your opening remarks. Do you want to add comments to the question I just asked?
I think Mr. Greenlee did a fantastic job. Some of the estimates that we've seen is up to 20% of GDP as one that we see quoted. But no one truly knows the vast impact, because even power systems, if they go without timing and GPS, which is essentially electricity, without that would be a substantial hit to the economy.
And Mr. Greenlee, which space-based capabilities do you consider most critical to Canada's economic and national security, and where do you see Canada's greatest vulnerabilities today that the Defence Industrial Strategy should address?
I think that most countries these days, with their sovereignty push, are looking for observation of the Earth from space to be able to have monitoring of their territory. They want communications from space for both broadband, like internet-type services, and direct-to-voice, cell phone-type services, so that everyone in the country can have equal access to communications and the ability to operate a business and get an education. Those are extremely important. Alternative GPS would be an important thing for sovereignty. We just talked about that. And then launch is, we keep talking about launch, whereby if you have to wait in line, if any other country reprioritizes their launch systems for their national interests, and we can't get our things into orbit, then we don't have sovereignty in space, and that's critical.
Mr. Goel, as a newer company entering the space sector, the defense industrial strategy places a strong emphasis on innovation. What does successful support for emerging companies look like in practice?
Well, we have a pretty strong opinion when it comes to innovation, and innovation should be applied in the right domains, perhaps where operational capability is not of significant urgency, or we are actually exploring a scientific question that humans are not at the forefront of. Launch has been a capability that humans have been capable of for decades now. The fact that Canada has not developed it does not mean that the rest of the world has not. Our priority is to get Canadian assets into space as quickly as possible. There are lives on the line, there's the economy on the line, and if there's an innovative route that makes that more feasible and quicker to attain, then we will certainly take it. But there is not. It's rocket science for a reason. The margins are extremely thin, and we have a job to do. So there's a room and time for innovation, and certainly every aspect. It is quite literally rocket science, from 3D printing our engines to robotic manufacturing of our composite pressure vessels. We've been doing this for many years now, and there's innovation at every step. We choose to apply it to the manufacturing and to the unit economics, but not to the fundamental first principles that actually govern the rocket science behind our capability. So I think we have to be very measured in how we apply innovation. And in our case, it's all about first principles and getting that capability up and in orbit as quickly as possible.
And where do you see smaller companies having the greatest opportunity to contribute to Canada's defense and security objectives?
Well, we have the ability to take on the type of risk that larger companies simply do not. Our team, in our personal experience, in my personal experience, we work weekdays and weeknights, weekends, skip anniversaries and birthdays. This is something that's very tough in large companies. But this is the type of commitment that's required, and that has been required by every company. We talk about companies like SpaceX. They started in a very similar capacity in a similar way, where they had people sleeping in tents on an island in the middle of the Pacific to launch the Falcon 1 rocket in 2008. We look at the Falcon 9 and say, yes, we want to build medium lift for Canada. But the reality is that so much came before that point to get SpaceX to the point that it is now to be a $1 trillion IPO. We talk about the Falcon 9 rocket, for example. That rocket, 70% of that rocket launches Starlink satellites. Their internal cost to launch Starlink is $18 million, but they charge customers like us and the rest of the world $75 million. Starlink runs 66% of SpaceX's actual economics. We think of them as a rocket company, but they're a space telecommunications company and they're a space systems company. So you have to be very realistic about the type of capability that we're developing, and small companies are the ones that can take on the risk and build up to a point where we can reach that level.
Wow, thank you. Ms. Normandy, back to you for 2.5 minutes this time.
Merci beaucoup. Quelque chose qui ressort.
Thank you very much. So something that comes out from the conversation is about the timelines. We need to go faster and faster in terms of giving out the contracts. And I was wondering to what point the DIS is leaning into that and fixes some problems. Something I hear is, for instance, with this kind of a policy, it's difficult to envisage projects that would involve a lot of construction because costs can go beyond what's initially envisaged, or beyond a 2-year timeline, for instance. That's difficult. So does the DIS really answer that question of the timelines before the contracts are given out?
Oui, je peux commenter.
I can comment on that. So in the DIS, there is a lot of emphasis on the DIA, the Defense Investment Agency, and part of their mandate is to accelerate procurement in defense. Now, in our own experience, we have seen that. We have seen that in 2 contracts. The Global 6,500 aircraft, for instance, or the multi-role aircraft, the Global 5500. We have seen acceleration in procurement for these two projects. The Defense Investment Agency has an important role to play in this sense. The two were slightly different, but we have seen acceleration in both. So it's in the mandate of the Defense Investment Agency to do that. Now, are the steps clearly identified so that we don't end up with very long timelines? We don't go through these boom and bust cycles and create all of a sudden too many jobs with too many contracts and then things slow down. Are we missing something with regard to that? Just to add to my initial comment, Mr. Bazan was referring to this, the Defense Investment Agency Act, as far as I can tell, will have some measures in terms of what the concrete steps will be and what the framework for the DIA will be to accelerate procurement and defense.
Welcome, Mr. Dalton. Over to you for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all our panelists for being here. This is an important topic. Just prior to asking a few questions here, I just want to make a couple comments, and that would be I'm quite encouraged, I'd say enthusiastic about the direction as far as building our defense capacity, having been raised up in the military family, having been in the military myself. So I think this is really important that we be developing our capabilities here in Canada for jobs, for technology. So that I'm enthusiastic about. But I also want to just share a concern, and that concern is that what we've seen is how funding can so often be led into mismanagement of funds. I'm not pointing to you right now, but I will mention that we have seen, for example, how the environmental funds, for example, the Green Slush Fund, there's all these different commitments, and the dollars have rolled out, and it's been really good for sometimes liberal insiders and friends and companies, but it hasn't been great for the taxpayers of Canada. And we've seen that also with the COVID contracts, with apps, for example, being made, with the ArriveCan app, with ventilators. We've seen all sorts of technology, money thrown out hand over fist with very poor results. And that's the concern that I do have. And so I'm not pointing any fingers here. I will say also that with the announcement of a $200 million spaceport that was announced, and the contract for 10 years for land that was already leased, is very concerning to me and to taxpayers and to this side right here. So this is kind of the flashing red, as much as I want it to just go forward. And so I know that Mr. Alzane, you mentioned that building real business, not dependent on grants, which can get really, accountability issues. It can get pretty sloppy, but it's important. And also having defense contracts, not just based upon Canadian defense contracts, because that's boom or bust, right? We've always seen that, whether it's shipbuilding or wherever else. So that's important. So I guess just that comment. Now, I'm wondering, Madame Hébert et Monsieur Pion, si vous pouvez parler un peu de l'impact des tarifs.
If you could talk about the impact of tariffs, the U.S. tariffs on the automobile industry in Ontario. Is this something you're seeing in your industries as well, Ms. Hébert? Thank you. Well, for our sector, we haven't really had a lot of tariff-related impact because we work a lot in defense and aerospace. There are some exemptions. So in our case, we haven't really been impacted that much. And we also manufacture a lot here in Montreal with a supply chain that is also based here. So in our case, we really have not been impacted that much.
Our perspective, we are deeply invested in the U.S., so we have suppliers in 49 different states. Some of our key components for our aircraft, although they are assembled and completed in Toronto and Montreal, the globals and the challengers, we do have a very integrated supply chain, value chain with the U.S. We have over 2,000 suppliers in the U.S., and I mentioned over 1,600 suppliers in Canada. What we've seen so far, like France...
If you don't mind, just because my time is coming right there. Just continuing with question with you.
Just to confirm what France was saying, I think the impact for us has been so far quite minimal. And the aircraft and main aircraft parts are not tariffed. And I think there's a recognition on the U.S. side that the U.S. aerospace and defense industry has been hugely successful. They have a surplus of $100 billion.
I'm going to have to interrupt right now, if you don't mind. Just so question here is, does any entity in your ownership or core supply chain trace to a foreign state-owned enterprise or non-like-minded government? And I'll be clear, is with China. There's a concern. I mean, it's important to have trade relationships, but technology. So do you see that? Maybe I can just really quickly say yes, no, or go ahead. Yes. Yep.
Not that we know.
Okay. Okay. So, all right, those are good things. And it looks like my time is probably up. Is that right?
Yes, sir, it is. It is now over to Mr. Earl. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I want to thank the witnesses, and I'll assure you I don't have analysis paralysis, but it's obvious it's in the room. I want to direct my question to you, Mr. Pion, and I will tell you that I've spent some time in the
Oui, Monsieur le Président, l'interprétation est
Yes,
impossible.
Mr. Chair, interpretation cannot, unfortunately, continue because there's a buzzing sound in the headsets.
Whose mic is it? Oh, Mr. Earl, it's your mic.
Yeah, say something.
Continue.
Yes. Can you use Mr. Watchorn's mic?
Now, I do have analysis paralysis, and I will speak up and make it quicker. So, as I was saying that... C'est bon? Excellent. I come from the aviation, aerospace, defense sector, and I wanted to ask you, Mr. Pion, from your perspective as an industry leader, what are the most significant challenges that you have, or you may be able to tell us about as it relates to dealing with the Canadian regulator? And are there opportunities to improve the regulatory process while continuing to maintain Canada's strong commitments to safety, the most highest standard in the world? Thank you.
Absolutely. We have a strong relationship with Transport Canada, and I think having a strong Transport Canada regulator, it's absolutely critical for the success of the aerospace industry, because it is a function of safety, for sure, a key function of safety, but it's a function of market access as well, because our aircraft developed here in Canada, they're type certified by Transport Canada. And we do rely on the confidence that other authorities have in the standards and the certification processes that Transport Canada has in place in order to facilitate exports of our products. So Bombardier export over 90% of our output to foreign countries from a very strong base here in Canada, but in many ways we're kind of punching above our weight, right? So the strong presence of the aerospace industry, it's not necessarily commensurate with the size of the Canadian market. We are a very export-oriented company and a very export-oriented industry. So 80% for the overall industry in terms of production being exported to foreign countries. So Transport Canada's work, absolutely critical. Negotiating technical arrangements and bilateral safety agreements to facilitate the access of Canadian products and services into the foreign markets, absolutely critical. One last point I would make, I think a bottleneck that we're seeing in aerospace, and we can come back to that if you're interested, it's workforce, for sure. So we look at our own situation, Bombardier, we do anticipate in the years to come thousands of positions to fill between retirement that we anticipate from our employees and also to support the growth.
Ms. Hubert, in your presentation, I heard you talk a lot about teaming and the different partners you have for the different work you do in many countries around the world. how important is teaming and bringing partners on board with you for the success of the programs that you run?
Yeah, well, for us, I think it's integral. Teaming is integral because we're not a platform manufacturer. We actually provide training and simulation, and we work with all of the platform providers, would it be on the air, land, or sea domain, to be able to train the men and women in uniform. So for us, it's integral from that perspective, and as well, we cannot do it alone, and we do rely on our supply chain of over 400 companies to get the work done. So, and also partnering with our allies and forces. Yes.
I have 1 minute left, so for the space people in the room, here's your opportunity to market pitch to us. What differentiates the three of you?
I can start. I can probably do it in 10 seconds. We're focused on a larger vehicle, quite frankly, about 12,500 kilograms of sun synchronous orbit. And that's enough to get Telesat light speed up to orbit. And that's, I'd say, our key differentiator there.
Mr. Greeley?
Oh, in terms of what differentiates is 57 years of experience and world leadership positions in Earth observation, robotics and rovers, and communication satellites.
For Nordspace, we're a vertically integrated company, the only one in Canada that develops space launch vehicles, a spaceport itself, and satellite capabilities. The integrated capability allows us to maximize our capture of the value chain.
For us, Reaction Dynamics, we're focusing on servo propellants, which means offering more flexibility to the end user, to the customer, and to government operators alike.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Gourdeau. Over to you for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est ma première
Thank you, Chair. This is the first time I am speaking at the Defense Committee. Before I start, I'd like to salute the brave women and men that are part of the Canadian Armed Forces and the Canadian Coast Guard. Thank you for protecting us. Mr. Pune, I hope you're doing well. I'm very happy to have someone from Bombardier, a company that makes us proud as Quebecers and Canadians. Now, the Liberal government hasn't really focused on defense manufacturing in Canada. So Canada has left well-paid jobs on the table and economic growth on the table. Would you share that observation? Thank you for your comment and your question. We are very active and we're looking towards the future, and over the last couple of years in recent times we have been very happy to see that Canada has now equipped itself with a defense industrial strategy for the first time, and of course that ties us in with other players in the Canadian economy and encourages everyone to invest more in defense. And as I was saying, it's not a zero-sum game, in the sense that we can strengthen our relationships with existing partners, especially the United States. As I was saying, we are really deeply invested in the U.S. in very important defense projects with the U.S. Air Force, U.S. Army for surveillance aircraft and transport and communication aircraft. But we can do that and diversify our partnerships with Europe, for instance. There was a question about partnerships a couple of minutes ago. I think it's absolutely the key for the industry if we want to succeed. That is also our model. We focus on the platforms, the aircraft in our case, but we work with system integrators across the world. We are really looking towards the future, and there are very interesting guidelines that are out there that have been provided to us now, and one of our priorities will be to work in that direction and to make sure that the changes are long-lasting. Now, you make some of the best aircraft in the world here in Quebec. Let's talk about the procurement and defense procedures. Do you think that enough priority is given to Canadian companies so that they innovate and continue developing, or do we go too often to foreign markets? Well, we have been receiving very encouraging signals recently to develop sovereign capabilities or to use as leverage the aerospace industry we have here in Canada. As I was saying, we are one of the few countries that have the complete capacity to manufacture, design, certify, and maintain aircraft. So that is a strategic capability. And when I look at the defense industrial strategy, it's very encouraging to have a main pillar on R&D, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There are programs, there are some initiatives, Borealis being one. These are encouraging signals, but we need to expand the scope of these programs. We also need to focus on creating partnerships opportunities to innovate. That requires a different approach. We are talking about procuring innovation and then having the structures and procedures and the channels in place to go and launch development programs in the domains to be selected by the government, domains that are identified as being the ones in which we need sovereign capabilities. That happens upstream. Even before the RFP, it requires an infrastructure in the security sector. So that requires a lot from the government, but also from us, from the industry, to create the framework for those changes. Thank you. Ms. Hébert, you spoke about the importance for Canada of having a sovereign training capability. But the Liberals have actually transferred that capability to foreign countries, to other countries. So when it comes to the replacement of the aircraft, the fighter aircraft or snowbirds, what is the impact of those decisions that have been made, in your opinion? Thank you for the question. At CAE, we are one of the global training leaders globally and here in Canada. We continue training activities for many members of the CAF across the country. We have many sites in Canada where we carry out these activities. We see a lot of opportunity when it comes to training future pilots. We are running the Future Pilots program. We also have a strategic partnership for the training of future fighter aircraft pilots. So with this strategic partnership, we work hand in hand with the Government of Canada and the Canadian Armed Forces to try to accelerate this program so that we are really able to train future fighter aircraft pilots. With regard to the snowbirds, we are really looking forward to having the next capacity, and we're really looking forward to training the pilots for this new capability. Thank you.
We're going to have bells soon. I would ask the committee for unanimous consent to sit through bells until vote. Carried. Ms. Idlad, over to you now for 5 minutes.
Good day, and thank you to all the witnesses for appearing today, and to the chair for acknowledging that today is the first day of National Indigenous History Month. Having said that, I have just one question for France and Mike to respond to, and also thanks to Hugh for acknowledging that we're on Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. I think that we all know that given Canada's history towards Indigenous peoples, when we've tended to see that we have an underrepresentation in this field of Indigenous peoples, of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. And I wonder if France and Mike, if you can respond to this question, what does the federal government need to do to help increase and have sustained engagement of Indigenous peoples in this field?
Okay, I can start. So we have seen changes in recent time with respect to reconciliation and working with Indigenous people. As part of one of the programs that we currently work on, the Future Aircrew Training Program, there are requirements to work with Indigenous peoples and Indigenous businesses, and it's a process. It's a process that we're all learning through, and with that, we are committed to work with Indigenous businesses to also work at skills development, to work at finding ways where we can better collaborate together for the future. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I think it was mentioned earlier from a labor also perspective, how in the world of aerospace, a lot of our pilots and our aircraft maintenance technicians, we do have an aging population, and we are really focusing now on skills development with Indigenous people as well, because we need actually more of the skills worker, and so there's a lot of opportunities. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah, I agree with Franz. Like, with the requirements are in the procurements increasingly, and it does affect our behavior for sure. Like, it's a part of every major project activity now to determine where we can engage with the community and include more. Yeah.
Thank you. I do see that I have some time. Maybe the rest could, the witnesses could respond if they're interested.
I'd also echo both Mike and Franz. A big portion, I think also Pierre mentioned that there's a shortage of workers and talent, and I think it's also up to the companies to work with Aboriginal communities and companies. We work with One Eagle Flight Networks, and there's lots of opportunity to incorporate across the value chain of test, qualification, flight.
I'd like to just comment on, some very tangible examples of what we can do at the SME level as well. Two examples come to mind. One, just last week, we announced an $8 million project in advanced manufacturing, a consortium led by NordSpace and NGen support. And one of the key contributors is Bear Paw Production in Ontario, where they're developing specialized metal superalloy powders that go into our 3D printers that develop our rocket engines. And we've been very intentional about pursuing that. It also comes down, as mentioned, towards the talent in the workforce. We're very proud of our lead structures engineer who worked at SpaceX and worked on the Raptor engines and is of Indigenous origin from Alberta, and came back to Canada because he saw that we are developing rockets here in Canada and could leave the United States and come back home. And we're constantly trying to develop that sort of talent here in Canada. It's abundant, and again, we just have to be intentional about it.
To mirror Raul's comments, pretty much similar. We have been very intentional in our decisions to partner with some companies, notably Southern Shore of Montreal, Kahnawake. In fact, we do have some parts that will be flying on our propulsion systems and rockets that have been manufactured there. It is our intention to expand that partnership. We are currently in discussion. It is something that is led by my Chief Operation Officer, Maxime. So he's spearheading that effort to see how we can incorporate more manufacturing, and we're very sensitive to the cost.
Yes, maybe just quickly to reinforce the point about skills development that was made by my colleagues. So just to give you an example, in Quebec, according to the Quebec Sector Council, CAMAC, there's a need for 65,000 new positions to be filled in the coming 10 years in Quebec alone, in the aviation industry writ large. That includes services, airlines, but also the manufacturing sector. So it is a huge issue, bottleneck. That includes schools' capacity, because the key schools in Quebec, they're actually full. So when you look at the needs in the future between retirement, anticipated retirement, and also supporting the growth, the need is very substantial. And there's a concern around the capacity of the school system in order to meet that demand. We believe that this is going to create, we should explore those opportunities, but opportunities to work with First Nations to address this skills challenge. From a supply chain point of view, I would say for Bombardier, we have an established supply chain for our aircraft that serve as a base for defense applications with modifications. However, as I mentioned, until recently, our success in defense was mostly outside of Canada. Now this is changing here in Canada, and I think it creates opportunities for us. We are exploring supply chain opportunities, especially on the defense side here in Canada. So that should provide some opportunities for First Nations businesses.
Thank you. That was very great. I appreciate it. Ms. Normandy, 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup. Peut-être une question pour vous.
Thank you very much. A question to you, Mr. Greenlee. You talk about governance in terms of procurement. The Defense Investment Agency was created under Bill C-31. It concentrates a lot of the powers in procurement under one minister. Do you see a risk of politicizing procurement in this context? And if yes, how can we counter that?
I think consolidating powers under the Defense Investment Agency, I don't think it would be necessarily politicized. Like, you still have to go through the same approvals processes with government to be able to expend funds, and the same budgeting processes and the like. So I think that the biggest opportunity there is the opportunity for speed, to be able to establish partnerships with industry and to be able to move with speed, to be able to move things through the system. A lot of time is spent in the current system, especially on larger procurements, in the interactions between defense, ISED, PSPC, and all of those authorities, to get them to always come together. I think if there is consolidation on the ones that matter, we can move much quicker. So I think that's good.
Merci. Je vais peut-être poser ma question autrement.
Thank you. I'll ask my question in a different manner, because one of the complaints we heard is the politicization of procurement and the protracted F-35 contracting process, for instance. So the new DIS and the new structure that is envisaged, the DIA, are they fixing that potential issue of politicizing, which already existed to a certain extent?
Already existed to a certain extent. So I don't think they're fixing it. I think politics is politics. And so whether it was the maritime helicopter cancellation, a couple of decades ago, or if it's somebody playing around with a fighter jet today, there's always going to be politics in the largest discretionary spend of government. And so I think that that's going to be there. I think that the Defense Investment Agency, I don't see how it makes it better or worse. Politics is going to be there. It just allows us, when it is time to go and buy something, we can actually go with speed.
Merci. Mr. Kubel, over to you, sir. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's great to have such a large panel of witnesses today, and I'm requesting that they make their answers short, because I have 3 questions I'm going to try and hear from each, and I'll go left to right, if that's okay. So just a short answer. Could you name a document, the most single recent Canadian government planning document that your firm or organization actually uses to forecast defense demand, and what year is that from?
That's a good question. So this for us has been a very strong signal to understand where that demand will be heading. Something that I think is noteworthy is we are building something that doesn't exist in the country already. We are building orbital launch capabilities.
Planning document that guides you to the capabilities of what you're building, or particular products? Is there any document that you can name that's helping you plan your business?
So based on the priorities of the DIS, we're able to navigate where do we see that demand coming from? Is it more observation?
No document particularly you can name?
Aside from the DIS, I think there's no document that comes to mind.
Thank you.
For us, one of the largest signals was the federal budget, and helped identify.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
The defense blueprint.
Defense blueprint,
yeah,
okay.
But I would say also proactive engagement to understand the needs of the future. I think that's very important beyond documents.
Yeah, I would say between the budget and the defense blueprint.
Thank you. Yeah, True North strategy and the budget, and that's why I was saying earlier we need the roadmaps as we go forward into the future.
I would echo.
I'm going to try and squeeze in another one here. 2 left. Again, from left to right, have you signed any new military contracts since May 2025? Signed, and I'm not referring to an MOU or entered into a discussion or talks or stuff that we've seen. An actual signed contract, dollars, work started for the government.
We have, yes.
You have.
Yes.
Briefly?
With the DRDC Valcartier.
Okay.
We have not.
Not.
I mentioned contracts with the RCAF through the DIA for the globals, for multi-role airlift capability, and also the NRC aircraft for research purposes.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't here.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, so we've signed a co-development contract with the Government of Canada on future fighter lead-in training program as part of the strategic partnership.
Yes, strategic agreement for enhanced communications satellite polar. That's about a $5 billion plus program.
Signed contract with dollars flowing, or is this agreement?
Dollars are flowing.
Agreement signed with a contract.
Dollars are flowing within it. Yes, in addition to a new satellite for the long lead item component of a new satellite. That was in October. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
October.
Yeah.
Okay. And
yes, through the DRDC, contract signed and dollars flowing.
Thank you. And very quickly then, we seem to be missing a national security policy as the foundation, the guidance, the threat assessment, the strategic assessment that would underpin or be the foundation for the Defense Industrial Strategy and then the Defense Investment Agency to get those contracts going and focus what the particular needs are. So it seems, in my opinion, and what I'm seeing, seems to be more willy-nilly all over the place as opposed to focused as what we need collectively as a country, not for your individual organization. So my quick answer question in the time that I have remaining, would procurement planning coordination, cooperation, focused and efficient, and national effect be better, in your opinion, if we had an underpinning national security policy?
It would definitely help. I would say it all depends on the national security policy as well. I think it's yeah, well.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's one of the building blocks. So.
Yes, same.
Would agree.
I think the most important thing is to have a long-term defense capability procurement roadmap, which I think for government would be helpful to be backed up by a security policy in terms of why do you need that capability.
I agree. Thank you very much for your comment.
I would agree.
Thank you very much. Do I have any time left, Mr. Chair? This is a first. Okay, my last question, I'm going to go really quick now. A national inventory, which we don't have, of capability, production, companies, assets, et cetera, the national inventory of everything. And we don't have that. I brought this up before. Again, I know it might not, within your own silo of what you do, apply, but in terms of effectively coordinating and efficiently using our dollars, do you think that would be of benefit for something the government to have to help better plan?
Extremely helpful because it would help also guide who we can work with on what. So that's, I think, very key.
Yes, and thank you for that. Shared national inventory.
Yes, absolutely. Understanding the gaps and how to fill them would be critical.
I would support this detailed capability mapping. It should go hand in hand with the build, partner, buy framework because we need to understand where the gaps are. And in terms of promoting exports as well, I think it's important for the Canadian government to understand where the capabilities at a detailed level reside.
Build Canada Buy, we
Mr.
have
Kibble,
always done. But
we have time for Chair Raminato. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I'd like to thank the witnesses for being here. So just because there seems to be some confusion, I just wanted to map out some things. So in 2017, we brought forward Strong, Secure, Engaged, which was our first ever white paper defense policy, which was then updated in our North, Strong, and Free, ONSAF, which is sort of our Bible in terms of what we're working on. We have defense capabilities list. We have the NORAD modernization. We have the Arctic and Northern policy. And then we have the Defense Industrial Strategy, which maps out and provides clear indicators to industry, the 10 sovereign capabilities that Canada is looking at, including also in the budget we've talked a little bit about. We've talked about the space launch legislation as well. So while I understand that my colleagues across the way seem to have difficulty finding documentation, perhaps we need to put that in one sort of document that strings those lines together to show Canadians that they are linked. I have children serving in the Canadian Armed Forces, and rest assured the Canadian Armed Forces do provide D&D, what their capability needs are, who then provide that to the DIA in terms of going out and getting what it is that we need and engaging with industries such as your own. And I think that's really something we're doing differently, which we didn't do in the past. We didn't come to industry and say, what can you help us with? We didn't go to academia and say, what research are you doing or what kind of problems can you help us solve? If we threw you and a startup and a researcher in a room, with a CAF member, could you solve this problem for us? And I think that's what's interesting about the defense industrial strategy is we've created that ecosystem where we're bringing all of these partners who have the solutions to the table through the defense innovation support hubs to allow us to tap into that capability. We have some incredible talent across this panel, and I wish I had another hour with you because I could spend an hour. Mr. Greenlee, when we were at CANSEC, you were showing us the latest satellite with payload capabilities, and we talked a little bit, and I said, okay, what's preventing you from getting this up? And you said, we don't have the rockets, we don't have the launch capabilities here in Canada. So I'm looking at the three colleagues that are sitting beside you, and I'm super excited. I have Reaction Dynamics from Longueuil here with us today. What could we be doing in terms of supporting this incredible capability gap that we have? You mentioned it, Mr. Greenlee, you mentioned, if we were to lose capability, satellite capability right now, we have to wait on somebody else to be able to launch a satellite to replace. What does that mean in terms of our sovereignty and how it's so important that we're investing in rocket technology but also in launch capabilities?
I think there's an industrial capability that is greater. Like we just finished the completion of an expansion of our manufacturing facilities in Montreal as a satellite builder. As we go through this year now, we'll be able to produce 2 satellites a day, so 400 satellites a year. Next year, we're under contract to do about 250. And so all of those will be launched outside of Canada. Because there's nowhere to go. So there's an industrial or an economic opportunity in addition to a sovereignty protection or sustainment opportunity by ensuring that we have launch. So we mentioned this $200 million seed contract that's been given to the spaceport, in addition to a couple $100 million to the rocket players in the room to be able to advance technology. That keeps things going and puts a small light on all this stuff. But there's a lot of other gears that we could engage here to be able to lean into that further. To ensure that we are, creating capacity even quicker and getting it out of the country. So it's definitely an area that would benefit from any focus that we would like to bring to it as we go forward into the future.
Now, often we're talking about defense, and I brought this up as well. In my previous role, I was the parliamentary secretary for emergency preparedness, and one of the gaps that we had is the capabilities in terms of wildfires, in terms of detecting atmospheric issues, whether it be wildfires or hurricanes or flooding or so on and so forth. And we do not have that capability that we need to be able to continue to be able to launch independently of our allies and also augment our eyes in terms of the Arctic. I'm going to give a chance to Reaction Dynamics, of course, because I visited you and I've seen the incredible work that you're doing. So can you, I guess I'll ask all three rocket scientists, if they could provide us with what can we be doing to assist you in making sure that we continue to support you, whether it be through the IDEAS program, to make sure that you can develop that capability here in Canada so that you can not only provide it to Canada, but also to export it.
Thank you for the question. And I would mirror what Mr. Greenlee highlighted. What I think is going to be very important is not only the support, but the consistency of the support. That gives a lot of certainty. I think all of us three, in a certain way, we've all experienced a rise of interest from investors. That means we can hire. We have been hiring 1 or 2 people per week. We've added 20 people to the team since September, not September 2024, September this year, last year, which has been pretty remarkable. The consistency and the belief that even if the first launch doesn't succeed, it doesn't mean it's the end. SpaceX needed 3 failed launches before they can have a 4th successful orbital flight. So this is really going to be key. I would push it further. When we will be able as a country to launch our own satellites, that means we can also support the alliance. That means we can also launch satellites for Latvia, for Poland, for these countries that are currently in a life-or-death situation where they need to launch assets into space, but they can't necessarily develop their own programs or they can't necessarily invest. This is something that we're fortunate enough to have in Canada. We have the ecosystem, we have the companies, we have the knowledge to do so. And now it's really about that signal because we've been around for 9 years, and the question that we've always been asked when talking to investors, when getting capital, securing funding, it would be, why do we need a rocket company in Canada when we have SpaceX? Why do we need a rocket company in Canada when we have, pick your favorite? And I haven't heard that question for a year, which is really good and really refreshing, because that means we can focus on building and not focus on surviving. So I think a strong signal and ensuring that that signal remains consistent. The launch industry in Canada, it's a little bit like a seed that has been planted. We need to water it. We need to take care of it. We need to ensure that it grows. It's fragile. But that will become one day a very strong tree that will throw shade on other stuff. So that's, I think, what is really important.
Give me the look. I'm not looking at him. Go ahead.
We have some housekeeping to do, so I'm going to, and we have a vote. But before we conclude, I just wanted to express on behalf of our committee our appreciation of your time, your expertise, and your leadership in enabling Canada to build and prosper, especially to support our sovereignty in space and enabling us to protect ourselves as necessary. And part of that is speed, which is critical to respond to the urgencies of matters before us. And Ukraine has been a great example of how to do that while, all the while, being transparent and ensuring that we protect taxpayer money. But we are investing and we are moving forward because of folks like you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your diligence and your very robust responses and discussion. Before we conclude, however, I'm going to ask the clerk to put up something on the screen for ourselves to be able to talk about a couple of things. One is we have an agreement for our budget. I think we circulated. I'm sensitive about time. I just need concurrence for the consider to adopt the industrial strategy budget of $30,000. Okay, all in favor? Done. And also tomorrow we have a delegation coming from Luxembourg. They'll be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. at 125 West Block. I'm hoping we can count on members of the committee to attend. I think they're also going to be accompanied by some senators as well from the other committee. And with that, with concurrence of the committee, we have to go upstairs and vote. Do we have concurrence to conclude our meeting and adjourn? Folks, meeting's adjourned.